All right, guys, welcome to the next episode of Tim Talks. We have a very special guest here today, Shaamak Goyal. How you doing?
Doing awesome.
Awesome, awesome.
How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing great. All right, let's cue the intro music.
All right.
Get further, bro. I know you go to those frat parties. Dance. That's pretty long.
It's tough.
Preach, bro.
Did you make this?
It's preset. All right, awesome. Well, Shaamak, thank you once again for coming on the podcast. Always great to have fellow guests on. So yeah, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, like your background, your entire story, how you're here?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm Shaamak. I'm for sure. Sure. CS Econ philosophy student. Um, yeah, grew up in the Bay, and before that, I lived in Angola for a couple of years, and then lived in Singapore for a couple of years. So sort of, lived all over. Yeah, super interested in like startups and technology, how technology mainly impacts society, and yeah, that's the focus of majority of the work I do. But apart from that, um, just like a professional side quester at this point.
Side
So
quester.
yeah, I was a monk last summer, and I'm an incoming farmer. I'm doing farming this summer. So
Bro,
yeah,
wait, like in Minecraft, like straight like planting fruit and shit.
yeah. I will hopefully be working on some beautiful artichokes in Monterey, California, which is it's a lovely area.
Sick, bro.
Yeah.
Sick. Cool. So so this is you just got out of high school, like last year.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So then you did YC like last summer.
I was part of a YC company in the winter 26 batch. So
Okay.
that was actually just like 4 or 5 months ago.
Oh wow.
Now. Yeah, sort of joined in like November, and then yeah, got into YC in like late November, early December, and then yeah, I was working with the founders of Payna for basically like all of winter quarter, which was a lot of fun working on a startup, but also hell doing that along with school.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, hindsight should have probably taken the quarter off, but yeah, really awesome experience.
Gotcha. Tell us about like the whole process of getting in and going through YC and like the people you meet and like I don't know just what your company does and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, like in terms of actually like getting in and all that stuff, I think that's more of like the founders of Pain a Question. Like they had to like deal with more of that stuff. Like what I can say is though, like um it's an interesting process. It's low-key like it's a 10-minute interview that ultimately decides if you're gonna get in or not. And it's probably like the worst like 10 minutes of your life. Like I've never heard of anyone having a good experience like interviewing for YC. I so actually like after I left Payna, like I um like started another company with some friends, and we actually interviewed for YC for like the spring batch. So like for the current batch right now. And that was like probably like the worst experience of my life. Like so they like flew us out to SF, like put us up at like really nice hotel. It was like awesome, like all the vibes are there. And then like you
Hey.
pull up to the interview and like dude, like you just say like hello to the partners, and then they're like super smiley, and then as soon as like they sit down in the chair, like it's just like it's horrible. Like they just start like grilling you on like every single part of your business. And yeah, honestly like super tough interview. But um in terms of like doing YC itself, it's probably the greatest like investment platform that still exists for startups. I think like for the most part, like the value of doing accelerators has sort of been diminished as like access to capital has increased. But I think the the amount of like signaling YC actually gives you to like larger VCs is still like it's still pretty unmatched. So like if you sort of come from backgrounds where you maybe didn't grow up in the Bay or don't have like connections within venture, like it's a deeply deeply valuable experience.
Gotcha, gotcha. Are you allowed to talk about some of like the hardest questions, like specifically they gave you during those 10 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions. Okay, so we had like a good amount of ARR. So we had like a good amount of revenue at this point. We were working with like, I think like it was around like 12 clients at the point that we interviewed, and they literally asked us about like um when was the last time we spoke to our fifth client, which was like so bizarre because like I thought it would like sort of make sense to like ask questions about like, hey, how did you get your first client, or like how'd you go from like first client to 10 clients, or even like what was your process of getting your last client, and was that easier than like the clients before that? But it was just like such like a random question, like, and like the honesty of it was like we'd onboarded like the customer a while ago, and we just hadn't talked to him for like 2-3 weeks. So we're like, oh, like shit, like we haven't talked to him in like 2-3 weeks, and then yeah, they low-key got like pretty pressed about that, which I mean, in fairness to them, like, yeah, I think we should have probably done a better job of staying engaged with the clients we were working with. But yeah, yeah, that was a pretty tough question.
Gotcha. And was this your first interview with them or second?
This was my first interview with them.
Gotcha.
So I didn't interview in the winter 26 batch.
Mhm.
I just like joined Aaron because like they were like they were just like the main people on the team.
Yeah.
So I just joined them. But like when I actually like became, you know, like a founder like myself instead of like founding team, like then that was like the point at which like I interviewed. And yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool, cool. So you guys got like top 10% thing or whatever for this quarter, or
Um, in terms of like getting an interview.
or
Y-
yeah.
yeah. We got that for yeah, for the spring quarter, I guess, right? So yeah, I mean, I know like, so to be honest, like the way the YC like interview system works is for the most part, like if you have good founders within YC that like refer you and like vouch for you pretty heavily with like the group partners, like you're pretty much guaranteed an interview. And at that point it's sort of like on you to like demonstrate that like you can actually like get into YC on your own merit. So I don't like I know I looked this up a while ago. I think only like 6% of companies like get an interview for YC, and then like around 0.5% actually get like into the batch.
Mhm.
But I don't know. There's a lot of like selection bias involved in that as well. Like, considering that we're at U Chicago, like majority of the people who either interviewed for YC or did YC here are like really really sharp people. So like yeah, we're just like sort of like conditioned to like meeting a lot of people to get interviews.
Gotcha. Awesome, awesome. And so right now you said you are a partner there, or like,
What?
or what YC, or like,
I'm not like part of YC like and their team. I'm like advising a couple companies that are in YC right now.
mhm.
So yeah, that's been a lot of fun. I think like it's sort of interesting like stepping back from like an operator angle and like starting to like help out startups. Like yeah, you start to like think and like reflect a lot more on like your own experiences so you can like advise them better, which is honestly like something you don't really get the opportunity to do when you're operating, because like every day you're just like waking up and like trying to get more users on your platform,
Mhm.
right? So yeah, in that sense, like you sort of lose perspective of like, hey, what did yesterday actually mean in terms of my experience as a startup founder? Like you sort of lose sight of that, which you sort of gain in advisory and I guess like doing venture in general. So yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha. How did you like get this role? Was it just after the batch they just like asked you to join them, or like,
Yeah, it was so like a lot of founders had like either reached out to me about like either the experience of like, YC, or like, how to get into YC, like all these like sort of questions. And I just known them for like a fairly like long time, to be honest. And then at the point at which like it started to become more serious and they actually like get into the batch, at that point that like relationship starts to become a little bit more like formalized, I guess. But there's plenty of startups that like I don't officially advise, but I'm still like good friends with the founders. And I think like I think to me like that's more meaningful than like sitting on like some sort of a board seat that's like semi arbitrary.
Yeah. Gotcha. What's like your like most common like advice that you give to all these companies or something like that?
I think like there's yeah, I don't know if like there's any like common. Okay, I would say like the most consistent thing I say is like talk to more customers.
Yeah.
I think a lot of founders are very like I mean sort of like rightfully so, right? Like they're very obsessed with the idea of like building a generational company, but they don't necessarily like it's very easy to like lose sight of like what you're actually doing, right? So like sometimes they'll ask me questions about like, hey, like do you think I should pivot to this, or do you think like this go to market outreach effort is going to work? And I'm like, hey, like, why don't you like talk to your customers and like understand their needs? I think that's probably one of the most valuable things any startup founder can do. And it's like it's very generic advice. Like almost every venture capitalist you'll meet will tell you to like, go and talk to your customers. But I, I think it's generic for a reason. Like it's actually like still the bread and butter of like founding a company.
Gotcha. Cool. What's your if you have a favorite, like what's like your favorite like new startup that like you've seen in YC or out of YC too?
Yeah, I think there's this startup that's really interesting. It's called Mount. They're doing insurance for AI agents. So essentially, like if your agents go rogue or cause some sort of um, like negative financial outcome, you can insure against that. And I think that's really interesting. There seems to be like a general consensus that um the next trillion like people or the next like trillion things on the internet will be agents. So sort of like all these different things that actually like build infrastructure for these agents, I think is really interesting. And I think like Mount in particular, they were just so early on in terms of actually like realizing that like insurance for agents and like agent infrastructure like needed to be built out. Like it was sort of interesting to see like these guys who honestly like didn't really come from a very like agentic background, like come up with a deeply like infrastructure heavy company. So yeah, I thought they were really cool.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Dang. So what is so what was like your like main like role in a lot of these companies? Like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much exclusively like do go to market and like ops related things. So yeah, basically just like finding where clients are, finding where users are, figuring out like how to get them, and then going out and actually getting them. And then there's like some internal tooling, like occasional hiring, like those sort of things that I do. But yeah, I think like majority of it is like broadly like go to market. So
Gotcha. How like what's like an example of you being like super scrappy to like get this one client or customer or something like that?
dude, like when we were like building, so majority of companies in YC are like B2B, so their sales cycles are like relatively like longer. And yeah, it's like you never really reach like 1,000 clients, right, per se, like within the batch, right? Whereas when you're direct to consumer, like you need tens of thousands of like customers and users on your app, right? And Payno is like one of the few direct to customer companies within the batch, um like closer to the start of it. So I was literally like writing posts on Reddit to like get people to like sign up on this app, right? And it was like super degenerate, and I had to like look through a bunch of different like subreddits, like find like, hey, like which subreddits are the users even gonna be at, like how, dude. And it was like so degenerate because like all these posts used to get like taken down by mods because you can't like advertise on Reddit. So I was like, oh, like how can I like write about this app without making it sound like an ad?
Yeah.
So yeah. That was pretty scrappy. I mean, eventually like I got like some agents involved in it to like automate most of it, but
Mhm.
like initially, yeah, initially like that's what had to be done. So yeah.
Gotcha. Sick. So you're super involved in like the startups and YC stuff, but so how come you're taking a step back and doing like more like personal like meditation reflection and by farming in somewhere far away or something?
Yeah, I think like, I mean, fundamentally what I value is like human connection, and like one thing I guess I've sort of been like struggling to like wrap my head around is like, I guess, what it means to be like human anymore, or like, what makes us like uniquely human. And I think that's sort of a sense of like estrangement that's just come from like working with software a lot, to be honest. Like a lot of like the promising software that's out there right now is like mostly automations for like back office, or like, like that sort of stuff, which low key like never really gets seen by like a user or client. So like that experience of like actually interacting with people gets like deeply diminished, and like seeing the impacts of like what you're building, right? So it's sort of, I mean, it's sort of just like a method of like reconnecting with that, I guess. And I think there's something like deeply satisfying about like growing and building things with your own hands, and like seeing the product of that like tangibly. I think like, to some extent, like you can do that with software. Like if you code things, you know, like it can like become an app, right? But majority of like coding now is like vibe coding, right?
Yeah.
So you're spending such a minimal amount of time with the product that you're building now that it's just like deeply impersonal. So yeah, it's sort of just an effort to like become more like personable with like things I'm building, and like, yeah, sort of understand what human connection actually means.
That's awesome, bro. I love that. And is has like the advent of AI and the future of AI, is this do you think it's all gonna like decrease human connection because of AI like automating jobs, or like people don't go to like office hours, they go to chat, or like just what do you think's gonna happen in the future?
I think it's like, it's sort of hard to say like broadly what will happen. I think like human connection will definitely look a lot different, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think this was the same with like initial development in technology. Like maybe it's like not necessarily that connection itself is decreasing, but it's just like being redefined, and sometimes like maybe even amplified, right? Like there's probably more like, if the average person right now probably has access to more people right now than they do in like 1970, right? Because like you have to like get this phone book, do all this like, stuff. Like you can't just like find someone on Insta and like shoot them a DM. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just like not possible, right? So I think in the same sense, like AI will like sort of change that. I'm like, I'm somewhat curious if like humans will like become more like AI. Like I don't know if at some point we'll like lose like our sense of like what it means to be human, and like sort of, since we're spending so much time with like, chat and like all these different tools, like we sort of begin to like mimic that. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that?
I think it's very scary that a lot of decision making from on a personal level, like it gets automated by AI. And like for example, I mean, I'm guilty of this too, but like sometimes there's like simple decisions of like, should I do this or that, or how should I like make my study schedule, or like whatever, and I just give it all to chat because I don't want to think about it because I'm lazy. But that's like, and that's pretty scary because it's like you lose autonomy, because and whoever, like, it's like OpenAI and Anthropic, they're like, whatever their models are trained on, that's kind of like giving all of this like new advice to people. And eventually this will like cascade up to like, our top government leaders. They might just be, like, what if they're asking chat on like what the best policy is, and then, they have to deal with all of chat's biases. And then maybe in a more dystopian future, we'll have like a place where literally AI is just like already like the ruler and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It could go pretty bad.
I think like what's sort of interesting is that like humans are sort of conscious of this. Like we realize that majority of the decisions we're doing are now being like dictated by AI. And like I've seen this thing called like the council, where like you have like basically four like Claude personalities running at the same time. So when you ask it a question, it like looks at it from four different points of view, and like that's essentially like your council of like reasoning, which is, I don't know, like I don't use it, but like I don't know if it's like good or bad. Yeah, look you want to like play around with it a little bit and see what it comes up.
That's low-key a really good idea. Cause like, cause you don't, cause like, cause if they just give you one piece of advice, then like you gotta like it's a binary outcome of yes or no. But with four pieces of advices, you retain autonomy and just actually just get like a good advice on like multiple angles.
Yeah.
What is like if you do you know each of the councils or like each member of it?
I think it like varies. Like it's sort of meant to be like four quadrants in the sense that like there's essentially two archetypes and it's like binary, so like that's how they come up with four.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sure they could do something similar with like more than four. Like you could have like a council of
Yeah.
eight if you really wanted to. But
Whew.
I think like the, the more important like, question with all of this is like are like are you really using Claude to like come to a decision? Because realistically, like majority of LLMs can be like yes men, like for
Yeah.
majority of questions, right? So now you sort of just gaslit yourself into thinking like, oh, I have four different perspectives, but instead you just have like four different iterations of a yes man. So it's like I don't know, like yeah.
That is really scary, actually. Like, like chat like I think it'll still hallucinate random like statistics to help back up whatever claims. If you tell it like, hey, tell me why like this demographic performs like this percent better at this thing or whatever, and it'll literally just like tell you why,
Yeah,
even if it's completely false.
yeah, I think like that's sort of like the scariest like implication of this all, right? It's that like human reasoning itself is like become diminished because we're just like outsourcing it essentially, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Damn. What is so and a lot of like the fears of AI is fake news. But in the world where everything is so scary, what is the value of truth if not for your own happiness?
Dude, that's a good question. I don't know. Like, I low key agree, but I think I think like truth is pretty subjective in itself, right? Like, it's sort of hard to yeah, it's sort of hard to like deem things as like absolute truths. So yeah, like I think for the most part, yeah, like truth is still for your own satisfaction, but there are still like societal implications where truth is like subjective, right?
Yeah.
Like if you pull up to to a court trial and like the glove doesn't fit, like um like that like who knows if that's true or not, but like subjectively like it's a truth that OJ didn't murder his wife. So I like yeah, I don't know. I think that sort of like extends beyond just like your personal conception of like truth being for your own happiness. Like it still has like social value.
Mhm. That makes sense. Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today, but yeah, absolute truth is like we may never have like we'll literally like quite just never from a human perspective have absolute truth of anything. Every truth is only relative, and it's relative to like what evidence that you can like perceive, and but then you're biased by whatever evidence will help you perceive what you want to see, kind of. Like I'm like this table is here. Like we don't know because we're not like omnipotent, but I have to believe it as long as I'm to believe you're here in this room with me. But
Mm.
but then the really interesting part is like how relative truth comes and pertains to religion. Are you religious, Shamak?
Yeah. I was a Buddhist monk, so I'm like sort of I'm not like deeply Buddhist, but I'm like culturally Buddhist. Yeah.
Sick, sick. Wait, can you tell the story of the Buddha with like your spin on it and the way you tell it?
The story of the Buddha.
Yeah.
Dude, this is I mean there's a lot of like interpretations of the story itself. Like I mean like sort of the gist is that like he was a prince and then he was like yo fade
Fade.
and then he just like he decided that he wanted a more virtuous life and like became a monk and then at some point he became the Buddha.
That's so cool, bro.
Yeah.
What are you big like on like virtues like Marcus Aurelius and stuff like that?
Not necessarily like I mean I know it's sort of like sounds like crazy that like I was a monk but I'm not like deeply religious. Like I am deeply spiritual, but I'm not like I think religion as a construct is just it has more to do with like rules than it does with like um like some sort of like external belief, I guess, right? Now, I guess there can be arguments made on like either side if like those rules actually like solidify your belief or XYZ. But like I'm not necessarily like so arbitrary about like following like religious rules.
That's really interesting. I've had like a long journey of Christianity, and one of the biggest things I've always been like is like big rule stickler, like you can't sin, you can't do X, you can't do Y, you can't do Z, et cetera, et cetera. But after talking with like one of my like spiritual mentors, I have this like kind of newfound clarity that it's not like in like our like I think the better way for in our like Christian ideology and framework to think about things is not like you can't do this, but like it should more be like um it's okay if you slip up. You don't have to like be super like nitpicky and nit gritty on every single like rule to make it binary. But you should just have like the heart posture and like the general attitude towards some things, and that let that guide all your decision making. As long as you have like like you do what Jesus preaches in his like lens of like love and joy and peace, and you apply that to your decision making rather than just having like your decision making already done for you by like some like commands, right?
Yeah. I think like that was actually like very well put. I think that's sort of the distinction in my mind as well, like between like what it means to be spiritual and like be like religious, right? Like I think spirituality is like very instinctual in that sense that there are like overarching principles that are guiding your decisions, but they're still like ultimately like made off your instincts rather than like commands, as like you said.
So you if you don't subscribe to a particular set of religion, but you are spiritual. So this implies you have like your own ideology, right?
I guess, yeah.
So like yeah, tell us about like your values and I guess your life ideology and spirituality.
Yeah, I mean like personally speaking, like my broad life ideologies is like, relationship defines like meaning. I think that's sort of like my like north star in a sense. Like everything I do is sort of optimizing for that. Um I think everything else that could be ideological, like, from the way I view life, is sort of just either a derivative or like sort of like tangential to like that, right? Like you can say that, oh, you should always be like selfless and like, do good by others, but why are you doing that? That's like to either like preserve or to deepen a relationship, right? So in that sense, like, if I were to like present my ideology, like I would sort of like emphasize like that.
Gotcha. Just use your own discernment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like everything can like be discerned and like linked back to like I think that general principle.
So don't use chats discernment, guys.
Yeah,
But but yeah, no, I find that even when I think there's a lot of things you don't even realize about yourself, but they're like kind of like deep in your, not to get too Freudian, but like kind of deep in your subconscious that you kind of have to like fish out by talking to other people, and like you will never, I don't like, yeah, definitely use discernment. Like don't be too influenced by people because you already kind of have like an opinion on like why, like what is right for you, and yeah, but yeah, this I kind of also like I don't know if everyone kind of has their own opinion on what's right for them. This also kind of applies like subjective morality or moral subjectivism or whatever you call it. Yeah, I don't know. What's your take on like morals?
on in morals in like what sense?
Like kind of like where do they come from?
I think like for a lot of people like their morals come from like religion, but I think to a degree like your morals are sort of shaped by like how you grew up or like the environment around you. Like I mean, let's say like you're not influenced by religion, right? Like you're an agnostic person living in crippling poverty versus like an agnostic person living in like a lot of wealth. right? Your morals are probably gonna look a lot different because your life conditions are forcing you to optimize for like different things, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I think that's like sort of my interpretation.
Gotcha. Do you think like all humans share like this universal like absolute like set of morals, or is morality just ultimately kind of subjective based on the person?
I think it's like fairly subjective based off the person. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it's hard to say that you know certain things will be universally true. Like considering the range of like different experiences and like conditions that people are in. Like I don't know. I sort of like feel uncomfortable with accepting that there are like universally true things in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's fair. That's fair. Um, yeah, no, I've talked a lot about this freshman year with like random people in regards to Christianity, and one of the biggest arguments they bring up is like there is absolute morality. Like for example, every human like feels wrong for every human to like waste another person's life, like not to like get rid of them, but like the unnecessary waste of human life is felt universally as wrong. Um, Rape is usually felt universally as wrong. Murder, but not killing, is also universally felt as pretty wrong. And this is actually like an apologetic argument that God exists in because He like programmed every human to like feel this certain way about certain things. Um, and yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I I think like absolute or like you know collective morality like that, that that's sort of a bold take because it assumes that everyone is like agreeing with said principle. Like yes, like maybe the vast majority of people would agree on those things that you just mentioned, but there are likely outliers, right? So does that make something like truly like universal in that sense? Like if there are outliers, like isn't that person still human? Like is that like moral principle then intrinsic to humanity, or is it just like intrinsic to like a Western conception or like a vested or a Western like value system?
That's a really good point. I think like like everyone, no matter how evil of a person they are, they still owe, or like they still get the basic human, just like respect of being human, and we can't like exclude them. Otherwise, that's like tyranny of the majority.
Yeah, yeah. I think like it's sort of it's sort of like I mean it's trivial in a sense, right? That like hey, if 8 billion people believe in one thing, but there's one person who doesn't, like it's sort of trivial to say, oh, because that one person doesn't, that means this isn't like absolute or like collective. But like I think like that is like especially with things that are like absolute, like all or nothing. I think those outliers actually do matter, like regardless of like how trivial like the size is.
Yeah, I think yeah, I haven't thought about that in a while, but like even like very evil people, they're like, I mean, that's like not defending their actions, but like they're still human, right? We're all human at the end of the day, and hurt people do hurt things, or hurt people, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So there's always maybe everyone is like on when they're born, it's like they are a good person, but like the environment makes them bad.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. I feel like I read like some stuff about how like I guess this is just like broadly a nature versus nurture argument, right?
Hmm.
Like yeah, I don't know. I guess you're right in that sense that like it's sort of foolish not to consider that like nurture, like the environment that someone grows up in, ultimately influences like who they become.
That's true. That's true. All right. Well, you so at U Chicago. Oh, so what brings you to U Chicago? Out of like all the many colleges.
Yeah, honestly, like mostly like naiveness. Like I ED2 to U Chicago because I like came here because I wanted to do investment banking and
Nice.
like like we place very well for investment banking and like finance in general. So I was like, oh, you know what, whatever, like it's just ED to Chicago, pack it up, call it a day. But like in hindsight, like I mean, in fairness to like high school me, like it's hard to have a good grasp of like what investment banking actually is or what any career actually is, right? So in that sense, like it's hard to, optimize your whole college path for one specific job function. So yeah, like that's why I came here, but I don't know, like now I can say it's like not a good decision because like, I have more context into like what, doing a job in finance actually means. But yeah, I think in that moment, like I made the decision that I felt was right.
Okay, so because you are against finance and all for like more startups and careers.
I mean, like it's not that I'm yeah, so I mean, yeah, I guess like personally I don't like really want to do finance like um and that's honestly just like I just like look for the most like the hardest like challenges, right? Or like what's like the most like intellectually stimulating thing um you know I can work in, right? And the point at which I wanted to do banking was like just looking at the amount of hours people did in banking and I was like, "Oh, if they're doing a lot of hours, it's probably like pretty like gritty and like difficult job, right?" And it's sort of I sort of just like conflated a difficult job with like intellectually like stimulating or like hard job, right?
Hmm.
Like, not to say that there aren't fields in finance that are incredibly intellectually stimulating, but like broadly, like it's not something that I personally find interesting. So yeah, like that's sort of why I think like startups is more interesting. I think like starting a company and scaling a company is like probably one of the toughest tasks you can take on, which is like why I think it's so interesting.
Gotcha, gotcha. In hindsight, if you right now could go back to your high school self, like, is this exactly 1 year ago?
Basically, yeah, yeah,
Do
yeah.
you think you'd be able to convince him to not go to U Chicago?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like fairly easily, I think so. Like
Wow.
I was I don't know if I was ever like super committed on like wanting to come here. Like actually I remember when like basically like the week before U Chicago decisions came out, like Berkeley Regents like Berkeley like Regent scholarship decisions come out. So that means like there's a select amount of people at Berkeley who get admitted before like everyone else, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
was like literally hoping, like I was like, dude, like I really hope I can like get Berkeley Regents because then I can just like move ED to Chicago to RD. Like I don't have this pressure to like go to U Chicago because like Berkeley is like pretty decent. Um, so yeah, like I feel like I could have talked myself out of it for sure, but yeah, I mean, hindsight, like like the people here are like chill enough that it's like it's not too arduous.
Okay, so you won't be hitting the transfer portal anytime soon.
Uh, who knows? Who knows? It's possible. It's definitely possible.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. Any is it back to Berkeley or like where you're looking like elsewhere?
I think like probably Stanford. I mean,
Yeah.
I would like consider maybe like applying to like Harvard or like MIT, but I think like there's really like not really a better place to pursue entrepreneurship than Stanford.
That makes
So
sense. Yeah.
so
Nah, bro, fade that. Stay here, bro. We're gonna make you Chicago
yeah.
Towels, bro.
I
Huh?
I I mean that like there's definitely been an inflection like even since like my time here, which has like not been that long, but at least in like the last year, I feel like there's definitely been more excitement around like entrepreneurship and venture and startups. Like the whole ecosystem here is definitely growing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think the main problem is that like there's not really enough like formalized infrastructure in our engineering department to like actually produce like a Stanford quality of like startup ecosystem, right? Like
Yeah.
if there's like right now there's only Meng, right? And
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of like systems engineers, like civil engineers who are like they just like couldn't be bothered with like molecular engineering. So yeah, like if those people like don't really have a place at U Chicago to like deepen their knowledge, like it's hard to sort of create that.
Yeah, I was always really curious why we only have one major in engineering, and I think it's just because like engineering majors are so like long and difficult, and like tedious. And I think U Chicago, we value the core. And if you, I don't just don't think it's possible to do like a full engineering major plus the core. But because I feel like we would have had it by now if it was possible, because those are such like big majors.
I I mean, I think I heard like that they are considering like starting an engineering department. Like
Wow.
I think like the problem is like even if they start it, like I think it's possible that even like within my lifetime, like not even at U Chicago, but like lifetime in general, like
Hmm.
we don't reach that like that level. Like just because um once the program's like even established, like it still will take a while for the program itself to like earn a reputation that top engineers will want to come here,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not just a matter of like just setting up a building and getting professors. Like the program actually has to be good enough to like get top talent here.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, so are you ever curious, and like, do you ever want to get like super technical and like being the ones coding or building and designing, or do you really like staying on like business side?
I mean, I think I'm like fairly technical, honestly. Like if I really wanted to, like I could probably become a Swede, but like why? Like I guess like not why. It's just like not really like what I find exciting about startups. Like I I think it's sort of interesting. Like there's not really an existence of like a technical and non-technical co-founder now. Like for the most part, like if you're technical, you're smart enough to figure out business, and if you're non-technical, like hopefully you're smart enough to like open up Claude Code, right? So like it's sort of fun in that sense that now you just have like two founders, or however many founders in a team that can do both functions. And I think that's something I've definitely like been leaning more into, and something that I will probably like do for future startups that either like found or join. Like um yeah, like the forward deployed model is like actually deeply interesting to me because like I mean, intuitively, I guess now it's like sort of makes sense that hey, why would you like have a blockade in between like scoping out a project and like actually building it? Like, why would you have two separate people for that? Like, now it makes sense, but I'm like super curious, like, um, how they even like came up with the model in the first place. But yeah,
Is the model one person builds, one person scopes?
like before it is right. Like you have like your sales guy who
Oh
goes over
yeah.
and like figures out like like what needs to be done, and then like that person relays the information to now like the person who's actually gonna build it, right? But if you're just like forward deployed, like you understand everything that's going on like end to end, right? Which is awesome because like now like you actually have a good understanding of what features or what things like matter to the client, and if you need to ship things you can just do it way faster. Like and you actually like get to serve in both roles, which is why I think it like sort of fits like I guess my interest of you know doing both like technical and like non-technical like related tasks.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. What was like your craziest like YC experience, or like I know a lot of startups have these crazy stories where like, oh, like they lost the funds and these investors are pressuring them, and they had to like do some like super out of like multi derivative step to like get something done or
Yeah,
whatever.
I think like probably the craziest thing was like couple months into the YC batch, like we'd scaled like really fast. Like we got like 1,000 users in 12 days. Like we were like working quickly to like get users on the platform, and we'd literally just like drop ship. We were like, like
Nice.
the unit economics of this are just like so horrible. Like there's not even a point like scaling this further, which we actually like very easily could have done, but it just wouldn't have been sustainable. So yeah, like literally in the middle of the batch, like pivoted completely from doing like earned wage access and like moved to like automating compliance. So yeah.
Gotcha. And it's been a successful pivot, I imagine.
Yeah. It was a successful pivot. I mean, honestly, like I sort of like left towards the end ish of the pivot. Just like pursue my own things. But yeah, no, I love the guys at Payna, and yeah, they're doing awesome work.
Awesome, awesome. So I remember when I first met you, you brought up sim care. So you first wanted to work at this like U Chicago startup before you joined the winter batch, right?
Yeah, yeah. I remember I was just like I was just like looking for like different like things I could do. And I was like, okay, like why not just like work at a startup? Like and I just like found SimCare and I was like, okay, like this is an interesting startup, a couple of you Chicago guys, and yeah, ultimately like didn't end up working there, but it was it was interesting like how many people like at U Chicago sort of like talk about SimCare as like sort of like the messiah of like U Chicago entrepreneurship, which I think is like actually very interesting that like it was actually very recent that like a startup like got into YC, did well in the batch, raised a pretty big seed, and is like now like accelerating towards a Series A. Like there's very few companies at U Chicago who've like actually like gone through that like startup journey like very early on. So yeah, I think in a lot of ways like um it's very good for like everyone here to sort of see that and like sort of understand that like this is an option, right? Which I think is like low key why like we're such a like big school for like banking and like finance in general because there's like a legacy of like Booth and like U Chicago undergrad of like you know all these different like banking execs who either were like you know managing their own funds, started their own funds, like seeing that success like is is like sort of influential in defining like what you want to do because you're like, oh, this guy's like in my shoes. So yeah, I think SimCare did that for a lot of people at U Chicago.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely been such a like. I feel like with my year, I think my freshman year was like the year right after SimCare did their summer batch. Like I felt like a lot of freshmen, everyone was so much more interested in entrepreneurship as opposed to like your traditional careers that Chicago's known for. Like and especially with like your class, I feel like every almost so many CS majors all want to like do hackathons and like startup stuff, and I think that's really cool. We're seeing like a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Um,
What was I mean, you probably spent a lot more time with like the founders of like SimCare than I did. Like, what was sort of like yeah, what was it like interacting with them?
Bro, I think they're definitely Tico and Prashant, the two founders. They're definitely some of like the hardest working people possible. And like yeah, I heard Tico puts it this way, like he's CTO, Prashant's CEO. Tico's like he's really good at optimizing everything, like like managing like the engineering team and like yeah, getting a lot of the code working and yeah, just building out the product. And then Prashant, like if SimCare is like getting like down and they need like like some energy boost, he's like the guy who will like be the visionary and think of something to elevate the company to a new level. Like yeah, and they were both like I mean, it's like your very traditional YC stuff. Like when you're raising, you like barely sleep. But like on a normal day, like you're like optimizing your health, like waking up at 5 a.m., going to the gym, and like just living in San Francisco. They just moved to New York though.
Yeah,
But like yeah, they're definitely two awesome people for
I
sure.
I think like it's sort of interesting. I know a lot of like definitely like everyone's health declines like during the YC patch for sure, but I find that a lot of people like really like to live an unbalanced life even once they're done with like like an accelerator like even after they've raised like they're just like so obsessed with what they're building that they want to just like spend every waking moment on it, which I don't know like it's sort of interesting like to support founders in like both contexts because on the one hand like you definitely want someone who's like obsessed with what they're building. Like I think that's one of like the best traits you can have as a founder. But at the same time, like you're also supporting this guy who like may or may not like burn out. Like at some point, like this founder might just like pack up their bags and be like, "Yo, I've had enough of this. I can't do this anymore. Like I quit." Like I think both like sort of demographics are interesting in that regard.
That is really interesting. I think I was just reading some essay on Substack relating to this topic, but like, everyone is like chasing money, prestige, or like their like obsession to be great. Like our generation, like everyone wants to be like him and like found their like huge big company or have like such a prestigious and insanely successful career and to be like loved by everyone and have the aura, right? But and one big reason people always talk about this is like, I don't want to be on my deathbed and have like any regrets. But like this whole like, article's like counterclaim was like, but like what if the actual regret is you didn't live more and have more fun and be more happy or cultivating relationships or just doing more experiences. And I think like our generation will have to. I think the reason it's so big in our generation is because of social media. Everyone's seeing like the like perfect body on Instagram and people flexing or larping their like Lambos and like their extreme lifestyles, and everyone wants it. And but like, um, is that even good for everyone? Maybe the real happiest person is just like, guy in Mexico with like a bunch of kids. He's not making that much money, but he just spends all his time with family and like goes fishing and whatever. Like maybe that's like the true meaning of life. Like maybe it is just purely like whatever makes you happy. Like it doesn't matter that you have to be great. And most of us like, and not even coping, but like maybe like statistically, like unicorns are so rare, right? Like not everyone will make it, and it's totally fine if you don't, if you can't. But yeah, but I don't know, maybe that's cope. Maybe you are him and you can achieve all of that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know, bro. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's yeah, I low key I agree. I think like this might be a crazy take, but I think people need to stop founding. Like they're
Mm,
just there's way too many companies out there. Half the people like they either like just honestly don't have what it takes to like be a founder, or like this is literally just LARP because they like discovered Cloud Code yesterday and now they're a stealth startup founder. Like I think people need to only like start founding when they actually have a desire to either create value or they like realize a problem that like needs to be solved. Like there needs to be like a sense of urgency to it. I think.
yeah, I see. Dang. So the F students are the founders and the A students are the employees.
um yeah, I mean like those people are like probably F students because they're like they're like vibe coding like during their classes like instead of like
Wow.
actually like locking in, which I don't know. I think like there's not really like a grade archetype of like the good founders, I guess. I don't know.
I wonder. So vibe coding has obviously made a bunch of non-technical people like be able to do amazing things with because because natural language is just you can exploit it so many. It's so useful. You don't have to like be a guy who like learned how to do Python when he was very young and like was can write hundreds of lines like by himself. Like you can just use natural language. But I wonder, is there still like a? Do you think there's still a good distinction between like a very technical co-founder or someone who's very good at like someone who always knew how? Hey, oh, of course. Do you think there's still like a huge divide between someone who's like very who like knows how to code very well and someone who now is just like extremely good at vibe coding or like
Yeah, I think it has, and okay, so I guess like technically like in terms of actually like building out the product, like yes, there's like definitely an edge, but I think more so, I think technical co-founders have sort of just developed a method of thinking that is actually translatable to so many parts of running a business, like beyond just like writing code, right? So it's not necessarily like that, you know, this this technical co-founder is gonna like make a product that's like 100 times better than a non-technical co-founder. I think like just having that sort of classical training will make you a better problem solver, which I think is probably more deterministic of your success.
very interesting, very interesting. You I spoke a bit to Ankit Gupta last year when he
Yeah.
came to Chicago. You know him very well, I presume.
Yeah. I know of him. Yeah, yeah. He's a YC partner, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. I was just say like you guys like have very similar mannerisms and like yes.
Yo.
No, like
Where's my job at? Where's my job at? On kit, lock in, bro. Yo, give me the job, bro. Yeah,
fair enough. But yeah, good stuff.
yeah.
I yeah.
No. Go ahead.
I so yeah, I like the it's awesome that you bring this startup energy to U Chicago. But I know you're now kind of involved or you're very interested in like quant finance now too, right?
Are you talking about Oracle?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, I think, like, honestly, like, I'm not that interested in quant. I was actually like talking to someone like earlier today about like how like the amount of people who say like quant is important because it brings liquidity to markets, like that it's like such cope. And shout out Krish Khanna because he's like a
Mm.
professional coper and he says this all the time. But like it's like it's relatively like meaningless work that's like very high paying. And I think what's interesting though about quant is that the people who are sort of driven, to just like want greatness and like are willing to like endure like these horrible hours and are also really really good problem solvers and have like technical like backgrounds, like these people are actually just like great archetypes for founders. Like if they can like find a problem that they're deeply passionate about or a space that they want to learn a lot more about, like these people can actually like be good founders. They're just like they're currently like choosing a path of complacency.
There, yeah. I mean, quant finance is the way to minimize variance, and
Yeah, it literally is. But like, I there's so many people who are either like quants right now or like want to be quants, and I ask them like, what do they want to do long term, and they like want to be founders. Like, part of that it's like maybe like, like we're just like trying to relate to each other. So like, this guy's like just gonna say he wants to found, but like I actually do think like a lot of these people who are doing quant in the temporary do want to become founders in the long term.
that I think you're right about that. Yeah, and so you think they're all kind of like doing meaningless work right now, and they should skip quant and like use their mathematical intuition and reasoning and problem solving skills and just directly just skip the founders.
I mean, to a degree, yeah. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, yes, like theoretically, like is founding like greater value creation for society? Like, yes, but also like, I mean, to what I said earlier about like not everyone needs to be a founder. Like, if these people just want to found for the sake of founding, like they're probably like not gonna like do that well, right? I think that fascination like still needs to be primary. But I think like I wonder if like even beyond like founding a company itself, like these people will like find like a way to create like greater value like beyond quant. And I actually don't know exactly like what that looks like, but yeah, I don't know. Like, do you have some theories on like what people should do instead of quant, like that sort of archetype of person?
That's a really good question. I think I mean, trading in general, like in whatever, like finance, like or mainly we stick to trading, day trading, and quant finance. It is it doesn't like yeah, it doesn't really provide like value to the world. And I think this is just matters based on the person. Like camp one is people who want to maximize money because money is leverage for building a better life in the future. And then there's like camp two where people really want to do something that like is intrinsically very meaningful, impactful, and then they just happen to get paid for it. And like the money was kind of just like the stepping stone that came in pursuit of their greater goal. Um, I think very specifically to answer your question, I think I've one of my like quant mentors, I guess um one something he really wants to do is like frontier AI research, like work at OpenAI, like DeepMind, Anthropic, like all these frontier like research labs, and then I think a lot of quants will do that, and that is and that could be great. But would I don't know. But we were talking earlier, like, is that even good for society if AI keeps getting powerful? Like when AI reaches AGI and closes the loop. So that means and when it closes the loop, that means like the positive feedback loop reinforces and it will keep developing itself instead of humans training humans. It's AI training the AI, and then it will be really hard to stop the AI from reaching its goal because its objective has been put into place. And I guess I'm going on tangents now, but then we'll have people fighting for the objectives like of like the U.S. and China and Israel, for example. Like it'll all just be like how we control the objective of AI, and then this is the dystopia that we were fearing.
Yeah, I think like um that is definitely scary for sure, but I still do think like these like people in quant should like work on AI research. And like also because like if you have a strong fundamental fundamental understanding of like of AI, like there's really not a lot stopping you from also like being an ethical guardrail like for AI. Like I mean, from a culture perspective or like from a work perspective, like we sort of use like chat and like Claude like sort of interchangeably, but like in terms of the work you're actually doing, I think it's there is a good amount of difference between working at OpenAI versus Anthropic, right? So like if these people like want to do like AI research broadly, there are more fundamental things like that are value aligned that they can do within AI research.
What is I'm not too familiar, but what is the difference between like for example OpenAI and Anthropic?
I mean, like Anthropic's like stated mission is essentially like to be like an AI safety company, right? So in that sense, like to your point about like models getting like out of control or like something like that, like if that happens, like I would sincerely doubt that like Anthropic would be the one to like develop a model like that. All like yeah, maybe am I like just like glazing to like get more Claude credits, like probably, but like also I think like the company itself, like if you actually like take their mission at face value, then like that's a pretty easy like conclusion to reach.
I know they definitely stand out in like talent recruiting pipelines. Like it's so hard to work there, and like truly only the best of the best like are at there. So
Yeah, I would say like um at least in current trends of like hiring within AI, like there's been a significant expansion within like the XAI and OpenAI teams. Like I think last year was their like first ever intern class, and like their
wow.
intern class this year has just like become like even bigger. Same with DeepMind as well. But like I still think like breaking into Anthropic is probably one of the hardest things you can do. Like just because the team is like relatively like lean in comparison to like these like other labs that are just like hiring like a shit ton of interns.
That makes sense. Yeah. Dang, that the OpenAI IPO will go crazy.
Yeah,
Whatever happens.
yeah. I think I honestly like I really doubt it'll happen in 26.
Yeah.
I think they'll push it to 27. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I mean I guess like the SpaceX IPO is like a little bit more little bit more like upcoming, I guess.
That makes sense. You know, so what's your take on someone like Peter Thiel? Um, yeah, generally.
Yeah, I mean like so the context that I sort of like listen and like interact with like the Thiel content machine most is like Founders Fund.
Yeah.
And I think objectively like there are very few funds that have been right so consistently in the way that like Founders Fund and like Peter Thiel personally like has been, right? And from from my angle as like someone who wants to do VC, like I I I think that's like deeply admirable because it is very like it's very hard to find like winners in VC, and it's like only becoming harder. So like sort of someone like Thiel and like Founders Fund that's like sort of done really well in that art so far. I deeply admire that. Like yeah.
I wonder. So and this has also been like the prevailing notion YC, or maybe not prevailing, but like a like kind of like a small sentiment of like concern. And you probably can guess what I'm about to say, but like, is YC picking out the winners, or are they making the winners? And same with Founders
Oh
Fund.
yeah, that's interesting. I think yeah, I don't know if really like have a good answer to that. I mean, to some extent, like yeah, you are making the winners, right? Less so for YC, more so for like A16 Sequoia Founders Fund, like that sort of like tier one VC, right? Like
Yeah.
once A16 hops on your cap table, like or at least like displays interest in you, like dude, everyone and their mom's gonna like want to invest in you, right? But um I don't know if like YC has that similar level of pull anymore because I think there's been like a lot of dilution in like the brand name of YC. Like yes, like still a great investment platform, but I think investors are still like cognizant like they aren't willing to like blank check you as much as like they are for other like tier one VCs.
I see. There's
Yeah.
YC's been letting in too many companies, and a lot of these companies haven't been performing that well, I guess.
I mean, like Winter 26 was like one of the best batches in like several years. Like
Oh, okay.
it was the amount of companies we had that were like genuinely exceptional was like very high. So like there's sort of been a rebound in that sense for YC, but like I mean, in fairness to them, like if you let in 150 startups into every batch, like not all of them are going to be good. Like most of them are actually going to be bad, like
Yeah.
around like 90% of them, right? So, like, and if you do that 4 times a year, like that's sort of how you start developing this reputation of like, oh, like anyone can get in, or like, oh, these companies are like not that good. It's because there's just like so many losers, right? But there are really like still like some winners. Like recently, like StarCloud, like that is like really interesting company growing very fast and like great team behind it. And they were they've been out of YC for like a year now, so like fairly recent. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure like we'll keep seeing like these unicorns like pop up like in the coming years from like the YC batches that have just happened right now. But yeah, I still think it's good, but it's not at that level of like founders fund.
Gotcha. Is it really 600 companies a year?
It's like around there, yeah. Like
Wow.
because yeah, I mean, I think spring had like 134. Like I think it fluctuates like a little, but yeah, like roughly it's around there. So
Gotcha. That's really interesting. And some of the what about like what do you think about like hacker houses like HF0 and like
yeah.
or like what's the one that Roy Lee did? Was it
Oh,
even one? Or
there's
Z Fellows? Yeah.
Z Fellows. Yeah, Z Fellows is awesome. I think the people at Z Fellows are really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to a couple people there before. Yeah, really like I would say like probably some of the most genuine people work at Z Fellows. Like, and I think they have really good like recognition of talent as well. Like they're definitely able to like pick out winners like better than most. Concept of the hacker house though, I think it's awesome. Like I'm actually currently looking for a hacker house in SF. Because I can't find housing. Housing in SF like sucks. It's like the
Yeah.
worst thing. But also like I think like it's sort of like making your own like mini accelerator, right? Like a lot of the reason why like people like really lock in during YC is because they just look at everyone else like who's also really locked in, and they're like, oh damn, like I'm not putting up those metrics, so I should probably like start doing that, right? Like
Yeah.
having that environment like in a hacker house, like deeply accelerates like your performance. Now, is that really healthy and sustainable? Like probably not, but yeah, I think the contract of it is it's pretty good.
I was in San Francisco last summer, and me and my friend, we were visiting. He's at Apple now. We were visiting a lot of hacker houses because his sister was living in one for like a few months, and yeah, it was crazy. It was like a giant house. It's like a frat house, but like the common thing connecting everyone is, oh, we're all building a really cool product, and just that community is like insane because everyone's like pulling all nighters, eating like pretty shit food, but then like you know you're constantly building because like there's like a demo day as well, right? Like and a lot of like HF0, like a lot of these like houses do actually get a lot of recognitions from these VCs and stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
HF0 is a niche pull. I that's like one of the lesser known accelerators
oh
that
really?
I think is probably truly like one of the best accelerators.
Yeah.
HF0 is awesome.
Hmm.
Um, I think like resident do all the people in residency also like live in the same house?
I feel like they do.
I think they do. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff for sure. The hacker houses in SF. It's like it's low key wild.
Super Ferda, bro. Yeah, cool. Um, I recently wrote an article on Substack as well about the AI being like a bubble, and I compared it a lot. I was just making a lot of analogous connections to the dot-com bubble, and but yeah, I think a lot of VCs. I mean, we can't deny current trends like AGI will actually come in like next 5 to 15 years, but like I don't know. Do you also feel like there's like a chance that like this crazy amount of VC investment is just going to so many AI rappers, and a lot of these companies aren't like truly profitable, and who knows if they'll ever will be, and they're just kind of like larping and just like eating up a bunch of money, and it is like like such an inflated kind of bubble in a sense.
I think like the real problem is that a lot of people and like a lot of VCs just don't understand like tech like that well, right? And um I heard like another VC talking about this, but I want to echo his point that like if you don't understand like the underlying tech, like these rappers like look really promising and really interesting because like you have no conception of like how hard it is to actually build it, right? So
Yeah.
like if this guy's like pitching you that yo like this is gonna be generational, like this is gonna be awesome, like it look at my novel innovation, like you're playing like oh yeah like bet dude, like here's my money, like take it, like but if you actually like understand like what's being built, like usually is that
No, you go. Sorry, go on.
yeah, I think like usually if you like understand the tech, um like you really won't reach those valuations. But because like there are so many people who don't, like these valuations for like honestly like shit companies are just getting like jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I but like that being said, like there are like real companies that are innovating with AI that I think like will be like will actually like return VC money. So yeah, it's not like completely a bubble in that sense.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But yeah, we talked a lot about this earlier. But you're here at U Chicago studying econ and philosophy. What are some of your like favorite philosophers or ones that like have had the biggest impact on your personal worldview?
Yeah, I think like I feel like a lot of the people in the Bay specifically like can sort of fall victim to like always optimizing for the future and like sort of I mean one like losing a sense of presence but also like being like permanently dissatisfied like with what's happening like right now, right? And I think reading Camus like really influenced me in that sense to just like be more present and be more intentional about like the presence. Um, so yeah, I sort of like think about him the most in that sense of like actually like shaping the way I live life.
Well, that's not sure. What is that philosopher's a lot of that person's like main like takes and stuff like that?
I mean, it's mostly like absurdism, right? So it's
Ooh.
so essentially like the only thing that matters is like the present and like the now, right? And yeah, I mean that's like the majority of the emphasis. And I think that's like it's very helpful like when you're when you're like a kid who's like goes to a Bay Area public high school, like um yeah, like living in the present is like definitely valuable.
Awesome, awesome. Absurdism is very interesting. I think the first person actually who like really like gave me this kind of like mindset and way of thinking is Prashant. Actually, I think I don't know if he still is, but he's a huge absurdist. And like for example, like everything is so absurd. Why are we here? Why do we look like this? Why these are my thoughts? Why are these my parents, my environment, and this timeline? And why is gravity 6.67 to the negative 11
Yeah.
and 9.8 meters per second on Earth? Right. This distance from the sun. It seems very absurd, and this is almost like a teleological argument for the existence of God, but it also is like very absurd. And he brings up the example of Sisyphus. Like Sisyphus pushes the rock up the hill, and why does he do it? He's in an absurd situation. Well, it's kind of like giving like the middle finger to the creators or the gods that put him in a situation, and he does it because it makes him happy. So like in whatever absurd state we are in this life, we still just keep pushing our own rock forward and keep going and living on life because we're in an absurd state. So we just do what we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, that's definitely interesting. I remember reading that the myth of Sisyphus as well. Interesting interesting philosophy for sure. I think a lot of founders honestly are absurdists in that sense because like when you're so consumed with what you're working on, like everything is about the present, right? Like that's sort of what I was saying before about like you don't really have the opportunity to like reflect on your experiences and like think back like how did that shape? Like that's because you're just like so locked on like building and just like scaling that you have to be like bought into the philosophy of only caring about the present.
That makes sense. Cool. Well, we're wrapping up on a little bit past an hour now. But like, Yeah, let's do some rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
Cool. Best dining hall.
Baker.
Best study spot.
My room.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, best dorm then.
Best dorm?
Yeah.
North, for sure.
You live in North.
I live in Woodlawn.
Oh,
I'm an
whoa.
aspirational North resident.
Next year.
Yeah.
Type. Um, uh, red or blue?
Blue.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, what is one final piece of advice, inspiration you would like to give our audience before we end this awesome episode?
I don't know if I've anything too inspirational, but I think I would just encourage everyone to be more intentional about like the way they spend their time and like actually focus on cultivating meaning, like whether that be like through relationships or work or like whatever uh, medium you have to cultivate that. I think you only have so much time on this earth, so be intentional with how you use all of it.
Damn, that's very beautiful. Well, Shaamak, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me. This was fun.
Fire. We'll see you again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, inshallah.
Amen. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. It's been another great episode of Tim Talks. Peace.